You know, to be honest, I'm really surprised that I actually have not done a list like this for y'all yet. So let's just jump right into it and talk about my favorite comic book movies of all time. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another video. Before we jump on into everything, as always, if you can, please hit that like and subscribe button if at any point you like what you see or hear in the video. Also, don't forget to hit the notification bell, as that really helps us out. And then, yeah, let's just jump right on into it. So, favorite comic book movies. I've probably had this list or done this list before. In fact, I know I have. I know I've actually done a video, and somehow or another, I lost the footage. So, so I think this list is probably a tad different than when I came up with it last time, which could be a good or a bad thing. You never know. But I do have a few honorable mentions and then 10 movies I'm going to bring to you guys. They're not in any particular order except for the very last one, which for whatever reason has always just kind of been my favorite. It's always just stuck out with me since I was a little kid, 5, 6, 7 years old. So, yeah. I know already that some people will feel that there are glaring omissions on this list. Just remember, I love a lot of movies. These just happen to be the ones that when I'm sitting there thinking about, oh God, what do I enjoy the most? These are the ones that popped in my head first, so I went ahead and wrote them down. So yeah. First of the honorable mentions is Dredd. And I don't mean Judge Dredd from the 90s with Sylvester Stallone. I mean Dredd, the Carl Urban 20 Teens movie. That movie is brutal. Not only is it a much more comic, accurate representation of Dredd because, one, he keeps the helmet on the whole time. Two, it's as violent as the books are. Granted, as I understand, most of the books are a little more violent. But I absolutely love that movie. I love Carl as an actor. And the fact that he doesn't have to take the helmet off to really show you who he is and still make you completely invested in the character, that's a win-win for me. So yeah, Dredd. If you have not checked it out, definitely recommend it. I believe it is available on one or two of the streaming services. Don't quote me, but I think it is. The next one, alright, this is going to be one of the few that's going to show my age a little bit here, but I don't care. This is one that I feel is a little, actually very underappreciated sometimes as a good comic book movie, and that is Dick Tracy. I love this movie. I've actually never read a Dick Tracy comic, I'm not going to lie, but I love the movie. And from what most people tell me, the way this movie was done is pretty accurate as far as the looks and feel to the comics. But I was a huge fan of it. Just a nice mobster, detective, good guy versus bad guy. Just a real simple movie that I enjoyed a lot as a kid. There's some good lines in there and whatnot. But yeah, I just think it's very underappreciated as a movie in general, especially in the comic book genre. And last but not least, this one might be considered a snub by a lot of people, but it is here and it is 100% worth mentioning for reasons I'm about to tell. That is Iron Man. This movie is 100% worth talking about because Iron Man kicked off an era of superhero and comic movies that, as we all know, is the MCU, and it just changed the way that whole genre is done on screen. There's no denying that that movie is special. It should be on anybody's list, and that's why I'm here talking about it. It is a good movie. Robert Downey Jr. is 100%, I think, Tony Stark without even having to act, but it is so good. And if you, honestly, I'm not sure if there's anybody on my audience here who's not seen it, but if for any reason you haven't, 100% watch it, because that movie and the ones that follow changed the superhero movies forever. So yeah, 100% worth watching. Alright, now on to my 10. And like I said, these are ones that just popped in my head, but as I'm sitting here thinking, there's so many movies. I could easily probably have done 50. The first one is Superman 78. This is one, I think it's 78, but it's the first Superman movie with Christopher Reeves. again, this is showing I know I was not alive when the movie originally came out, but these were shown a lot as a kid because I want to say that they were still going through the original 4 or 5 movies as I was a very young kid. So I got to see a lot of Christopher Reeves as Superman. I know for a lot of people, Jay included, Christopher is very much his Superman. For me, Henry Cavill is mine. I get behind everything he does when he's in the suit. But again, this is Superman at his best. He stands for truth, justice, and the American way. And you watch him be the beacon of light that he is written for. He is a beacon of hope. So, and I love it. And for that reason, that's why it deserves to be on this list. All right. So this next one is pretty much the first comic movie that I can remember as a child coming out, and it is Batman. It's the original 1989 release with Michael Keaton. So this is one of the first ones as a kid that I got to see, and I could still watch this movie today between Michael, and Jack Nicholson as Joker. I could take or leave Kim Basinger on that one, and it's also all about the OG Batmobile. That car is still the best Batmobile to this day, in my opinion, over any other Batmobile that's ever existed. And that might be why it's actually on the list. But that one and Batman Returns, I absolutely love those two. But yeah, so if you've not really seen the original Batman movies, I would definitely recommend Batman and Batman Returns. When you get into Batman Forever and Batman and Robin, they started getting really campy and really at that point. And just, to me, didn't necessarily work. Though, there are some good caricatures in there. Like, Jim Carrey as the Riddler actually is really well done. So, if for any other reason, that's why you should watch Batman Forever. And also, it's pretty much the only live-action version of Robin that you've ever gotten with Chris O'Donnell. And they missed the bar with him. He could have been Robin and moved on to Nightwing easily if they had really wanted to. So, yeah. Check out that. Okay. I have a feeling I'm going to say this next one, and this is going to be a love-hate. There are some people that probably love this movie, and there are some people that are just not going to like this movie at all. But it is Fantastic Four, the 2000s run, with Chris Evans, Jan Griffin, Jessica Alba, and Michael Chiklis. I loved those 2 movies, but I'm specifically talking about the first one in this instance because it's the one that stands out a lot more to me, even though I do love Silver Surfer. I loved it. It had everything by that point that I was really starting to enjoy movies. It had some action, it had my superheroes, and it had humor, and I loved it. The back and forth between Johnny and Ben throughout that whole movie to me is really what makes it. And then, of course, I cannot forget, and the actor's name, I'll probably put it on the bottom of the screen. I can't remember his name, but there was a perfect casting for Doctor Doom. Period. So I hope if they do bring Doctor Doom back, I hope they do as well as he did, because he was awesome in that role. Okay, so moving along, this next one definitely is not going to surprise anybody at all. It actually came out just this past year in 2021, and that is Spider-Man No Way Home. Now, I'm not going to lie. This is actually the only one of Tom Holland's Spider-Man movies I have seen. I have not seen Homecoming and, Far Away From Home. I've not seen either of those yet. So I have no real opinion on the trilogy itself, but this movie, on its own, is the best Spider-Man movie ever, in my opinion. And I realize that you've got the Tobey Maguire movies and the Andrew Garfield ones that he did, and both of those were absolutely excellent. But this movie is the best because it literally incorporates both of those gentlemen into the movie, and you get the multiverse, and it's so awesome to see the 3 of them working together, and I absolutely loved it. The juxtaposition between how the 3 of them play the characters, especially because Tom is the young Spider-Man. The other 2 have been around for a while, especially Tobey's Spider-Man. Tobey, at that point, they probably have him close to 40, 50 years old. Andrew somewhere in the middle. And then you have Tom. I loved every part of this movie. The sad part is before I got to go see it, unfortunately, I happened to open social media, so the Daredevil cameo was spoiled for me. Kind of sucked because Daredevil is my favorite, and I've been waiting to see Charlie Cox come back. Nonetheless, I still got really excited when I saw him on the screen because I was like, yes, Charlie has definitely not forgot how to play Matt Murdock. But Toby and Andrew, I had no clue. So when he came, especially when Andrew came in and ripped the mask off, I was like, oh my, and I said out loud, I said, oh my God, in the theater, and I slapped the chair. I was so excited. And then they threw in Toby. I was like, geez, it was awesome. It was so awesome. So yeah, there's not enough good things I can say about that movie. You have to see it if you are a comic book fan, especially of Spider-Man, and if you like multiverse stuff, you will 100% leave it. And also, I need to, before we move on, William Dafoe as Green Goblin is one of the best villains ever in Marvel. Any movie you can think of, one of the best bad guys ever. It is so great how he plays that character. Alright, so now we're going to move along. Going to jump over to the DC universe, and that movie is Shazam. I've said it a few times for anybody who has probably heard me do a video on here, or anybody who just knows me. I was so excited for Shazam. I cannot explain why I have always liked this character since I learned about him. Because when somebody finally told me Shazam, I'm like, who's that? And they were like, them and Captain Marvel are the same person. I'm like, oh, okay. For whatever reason, a magical version of Superman that has lightning always appealed to me. Couldn't tell you, especially when they gave him the hood. So when they announced this movie, and then they announced the fact that Zachary Levi was the one playing him, instant just through the roof excitement, especially after seeing the trailers. And when we went to see this movie, I was the first person who was awake in the house. I was dressed, ready to go. Everybody came out thinking that I would probably still be asleep, and it's like, no, there I was, ready to go. And this movie for me did not disappoint. It is everything you could hope for when you go to see a movie about a kid who is imbued with superpowers from a wizard. And Zach does a great job of, Zach is a good-sized dude. He's probably got to be 6'4", built like a football player. But he does a good job of having a youthfulness and an immaturity to how he plays Shazam, because we got to remember Billy's 11, 12 years old. So he does a great job of actually being an 11, 12-year-old adult as a superhero. I think it's awesome. Not to mention, Mark Strong as the villain. So it was perfect. I loved it. I loved magic, and just seeing all the superhero stuff was cool. So and it's probably still my favorite of the DCEU stuff that's come out, although Man of Steel is a very close second, but Shazam is definitely my favorite. Alright. This next one is one that when we got it, it was like, thank you. It's about time that you got this character pretty much how they were supposed to have been the whole time. And I'm talking about Logan. I am a big fan of, Logan, Wolverine in general. The X-Men movies were great and whatnot, but they did not allow the character to be what he was until we got this movie. Then finally, we got Wolverine in all his glory. You got Berserk mode, you name it. It was there. And, of course, I got Patrick Stewart back as Professor Xavier, and I am a huge Patrick Stewart fan, dating all the way back to Star Trek The Next Generation. So pretty much everything that Patrick does to me is just, it's gold. So, awesome movie. I absolutely loved it. And, of course, they introduced X-23. So, you have to watch this movie. If you've ever watched the X-Men movies, any of them, and you wonder, it's like, well, Wolverine's nothing like he is in the comics, just watch this one, and then you'll get what you want. Alright. Weird little segue, but yeah. So we're going to get into it. We're going to go from Logan to one that, specifically out of the franchise so far, to me is the best, for reasons I will explain. Transformers, the very first one. I was not the biggest fan of the cartoon as a kid. I'd watch it, but I didn't watch it a lot. But I knew Optimus's voice. That was a voice that it was one of those distinct voices you always knew. So when this came out and I found out that I got the same guy doing his voice for the live action movie, I was sold on just that alone. But the reason why this movie to me holds up more than the other Transformer movies that followed is because the use of practical effects when it came to the Transformers. A lot of times, like, I understand CGI is great and you can do a lot of things with it, but there are times where if you can use the practical effects, then do it by all means, because it made this movie look better to me than if they had done way more CGI like they did in the subsequent movies. But this was one where, again, completely invested. I loved everybody, even though I don't remember most of the characters. Sam Witwicky, of course, one of the main characters from the original series. And you get Optimus, Bumblebee, and this and that. And, of course, Bumblebee not being able to talk, so using the radio stations to convey what he was trying to say vocally was always pretty cool. I thought that was actually a really ingenious way of doing things. So I kind of wonder how much they had to like research certain clips so that they could do everything like they did to give them the lines. But I thought that was always pretty ingenious. All right. So these next three, I know I said nothing's in particular order, but these next three definitely are the ones that stand up above the others for a reason. And I say next three, really, it's five, but I'm comboing a couple of them together. But Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1 is probably my favorite out of the MCU movies. And like I said, I absolutely knew nothing about the Guardians, like probably most people that went to see the movie. I had only been reading comics when it came out for a short period of time, maybe a year, maybe two at the most. So I actually really hadn't dug much into Marvel just yet. This movie hits everywhere. Granted, it's funny, but the soundtrack is still probably one of the best out of all of them. It's probably the best. I take that back. But and it also helped remind me. I love Chris Pratt as an actor. He's hilarious. And Rocket, hearing Bradley Cooper doing Rocket's voice, I'm not sure. It's kind of like Kevin Conroy with Batman. I'm not sure if I can actually accept anybody else doing Rocket in the future, because Bradley is absolutely perfect on it and whatnot. It's an all-around joy of a movie to watch. I loved it. I still go back and watch it. I've probably watched it 10, 12, 15 times. Some ridiculous number, but I try to watch it all the time because it's fun. Especially since they just released the holiday special, which if you haven't seen it, please do. It's hilarious. And I have a feeling that a couple of things that are coming in Volume 3 next year will make a little more sense if you watch the holiday special. Alright. So this next one is a combo because really to me they're both unbelievably good. And it's Deadpool. Ryan Reynolds fought for a long time to get a Deadpool movie. He had that screenplay that was so good, and they actually used part of that in the movie. Ryan was born to play Deadpool. He is Deadpool without really having to act. So, again, it's great. You get all the action you could ever want. You get some of the most hilarious comedy and the back and forth between like him and Colossus, what he does with Ajax in the first movie. The second movie, some of his reactions with Juggernaut are epic. It's just, they're a whole lot of fun, and they're every bit as good as the comics and the video game. I do love the video game. Yeah, so Deadpool 1 and 2, definitely got to check them out. Alright, so the final movie on my entire list, this is the one that harps back to my childhood. I've loved both of these movies for 30 some odd years at this point, because they both came out in like 90 and 92, I think. But it's the original two Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle movies. I love them. I quote these movies even today. That's just how much they've stuck with me. If you are a big Turtles fan, definitely check these out. In my opinion, they are better than the two movies that we got in the 20-teens up to 2020. They're not bad, but they are definitely not a really great representation of the Turtles and that whole universe. The first two movies definitely are. Not to mention, like I said, everything was very practical. They had they had people in the suits doing them. If you ever get a chance to watch a documentary, the way everyone spoke, it was a kind of a remote system. They had people in the suits doing the mannerisms and whatnot, but the mouths moved by someone moving their hand like this with some kind of thing that was hooked up to it, so then they could speak. So it's actually really cool and kind of ingenious when you think about that's 30 some odd years ago that came out, but they were able to do that. And then the guy playing Shredder was absolutely a perfect casting. I love that guy. So, yeah, if you want to go back and see a classic, definitely watch the first TMNT and then Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle Secret of the Ooze. There is a third one. I've never been a big fan of it, but if you do want to check it out, you can. They go back to ancient Japan in that one, but for me, it's just not as good. But the first two are instant all-time classics. All right, so that's pretty much my list. Like I said, there are probably some glaring omissions, but there are a lot more movies that I could just sit here and talk about. But I tried to, like I said, think of what came to my head first, but also, try to throw a little bit of a spread in there, so it's not just all Marvel and DC stuff. There are at least a few other things. So definitely let me know in the comments, what are some of your favorite movies. Maybe some of them are ones that I have not seen yet, so that I can definitely try to find them. If they're on a streaming service, cool. If I've got to find a way to rent them or something, definitely will. But I want to hear from every one of you what your favorite comic book movies are. And anyways, that's all I've got. As always, please stay safe, stay healthy, and I will catch you next time. Later, everyone.